I had to go check out the Russian banya in northern Dallas area, and really
And
cool.
of course, I know IR isn't actually microwave. Physicist, you don't need to correct me in the comments.
Yeah, this picture kind of encapsulates for me the pinnacle of the learning process and just an amazing trip that I had in Toronto.
Guess who's coming to sauna? Hekilunta. Guess who's coming to sauna? Hekilunta.
Welcome again to another awesome edition of the Upper Bench Sauna podcast. I am joined, as always, with Risto and Arrow, myself, Sam. We are talking today. We've got a really cool episode here. But before we get started, I did want to, just give a shout out to all of our listeners, the loyal fans. We're doing this for you guys to make sure that you've got an outlet for your sauna content out here in the algorithm. So if you want more sauna content, be sure to like, share, subscribe. It really does mean a lot to us here. If we could ask you for one thing for Christmas, that would be it. But no, we're doing well here. Arrow, what's happening up there in the Northeast?
Well, we had snow here. We had a lot of snow, and then we had a lot of wind and a lot of rain, and now there's no snow. So it's we're gonna getting closer to a dark and hopefully dry Christmas. But things are fine here. I actually had my sauna night last night, and I was with my buddies. We did some 3-4 hours of good sauna, something to eat, and great stuff. Was going on there, and it was so funny enough. So I went into the city. I was on the 38th Street actually yesterday. So I went and saw this doctor, and sauna is really a hot thing these days because it was such an interesting thing. So obviously the idea was to talk about my health, but I would say that 30-40% of the time we were talking about saunas. So it's an interesting. I promised to help this nice doctor out. He's gonna build himself an outdoor sauna about a couple of hours north of New York City. But anyway, life is good. Christoph, what's going on with you?
Hey, Merry Christmas, gentlemen. Good to see you guys. Not much. Same weather here is like similar to New York, up and down. It's been a little crazy, but that's fine. It's winter time. That's what you would expect. Sam, you went to the banya in Dallas, right?
Yeah. Now that I'm a an official Texan, I got my license plate the other day. Yeah, I had to go check out the Russian banya in northern Dallas area, and really cool. It's been on my list, as you guys know, for a long time. It was probably half the reason I moved to Dallas. But no, it was cool. I definitely hyped it up, and you know what? It did not disappoint. I'll be honest. I was pleasantly surprised. It really hit a lot of the check boxes for me. It had its ups and downs, just like every other place or any other thing that you go to. You're going to have pros and cons, but I really do think it met my expectations. I got great heat. The banya was roaring. We were probably looking at about 200, maybe 210 Fahrenheit. And it was great, and was fortunate enough to be there. I don't know what their real routine or schedule is, but depending on who's there and what's kind of going on, they have different theme nights. They might have a men's night or a women's night, or they definitely have their own different crowds. I got to talk to a lot of the people there. Everyone was very welcoming. I talked to one of the massage therapists there, and he was kind of giving me the rundown of how things go, and what the kind of what the culture is there locally. And it was great. Wasn't very busy. I went on a Sunday afternoon, during football season. So my team played early morning that day, so I got to go sweat it out in the afternoon. But it was great. I was probably there for 3-4 hours. And I think I was able to really hit everything. They did have a quote unquote Finnish sauna. that was kind of under repair, or kind of a work in progress. Yeah, they were redoing the rocks in the stove. I believe it was a large hume, but none of the rocks were in it, and they were actually just running it without rocks, just saying, hey, we'll warm up the space, but it was definitely not what you were looking for. But I think that was kind of a remodeling, or they were under construction, maybe changing out the rocks. Maybe it was a new heater, maybe a test. I don't know what we were doing, but didn't spend much time in there. Definitely spent a lot of room in the banya. They were able to do a infusion, the scent infusion kind of session. It wasn't a full blown Aufguss, theatrics and all that, but they did have a guy come in with a few different pre-made waters that were infused with different scents. One was, I believe, tangerine. Another one was very floral, almost had like a lavender to it. And then there was more of an earthy kind of vibe on the third one. So it was nice. And they went around, and he did have a small towel, and he would kind of fan you down a little bit after each different scent. But it was intense, when
Did,
you're.
did it feel more like old school Eastern European type of a practice, or was it
Mhm.
like hipster, some music going in the background?
Yeah, no, no, it was definitely much more authentic. You could tell that these guys have been doing it forever. It was just another Sunday afternoon for these guys. Hey, this is what we're doing. I'm gonna wave this around, and if you don't like it, you can wave your hand, pass. But if you like it, bring it on. But it definitely, when somebody's waving the towel in your face, you're on the upper bench at 200 degrees, it definitely can be a little intense. But I think it was great. Got to meet Arrow's friend. And
Deborah.
yeah, with Deborah. She was super excited to see me there. I think that was the first time I've been recognized for sauna things in the wild. But no, Deborah was great. She showed me around a little bit, and we got to sweat a few sessions out. Definitely be back with all those guys. So I will be honest. It is a experience, and it is not it's not the cheapest sauna in the world.
How much?
So you're probably looking at, it was right around $80 but it's an all day pass,
Yep.
which is nice. So, I mean, you get like any other place, you usually get a key, on a little key fob for your locker. They give you towels were plentiful. You had a robe if you wanted to swap it out. And then you could order food and drink and relax, in their kind of cool down area that was separate from the restaurant. If you wanted to, you could just go there to go to the restaurant. You don't have to go to the whole banya experience, but you can get basically reap all the benefits of having a restaurant on site while you're there at the banya. So, we sat down and had a couple adult beverages, and a couple of snacks, and it was great. You know what? I definitely recommend it if you're in the Dallas Fort Worth area and looking for a good sweat. I would highly recommend it. It's good. Where could I say? Probably you're only about a half an hour from the airport, in that location, depending on the time of day. But highly recommend it.
So Sam, I have a question for you because I'm the one with the accent. So it's just like, do you think that there's like a conspiracy going on, with these banyas, considering that the Finnish sauna experience happens to be always like lesser than the actual banya thing? Like, are they like working together against the Finns?
Well, it's like the Made in America stuff. I'm gonna make sure that stuff's working before the other stuff, sitting next to it on the shelf. And maybe it is. Maybe they're kind of giving a little, thumb in their nose to the Finns and saying, "Hey, yeah, the Finnish sauna's over there. It's not that great. Have at it. But hey, we've got this over here."
Well, I suspect that most of them are just like Americans, where they don't really understand what Finnish sauna is.
Yeah.
Their experience is probably just hotels and different things, and they know it's popular, so they want to offer it for their guest, and then they give you kind of the Americanized version.
Mhm.
Whereas I think probably most Finns are going to want to hang out in the banya hot room.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
definitely the case. That's definitely the case. It's like the banya, the main banya, the biggest banya you have there. That's where you want to go.
yeah, absolutely. The one thing I didn't see much of was water use inside of the hot rooms. You could throw you could throw your own water in the banya if you wanted a little bit more, on the rocks, on that big heater there, which was, massive brick. Loved it. I could, just sit in there and kind of study that for a while, but didn't see a lot of liberal water usage. Now they did have a cold plunge. They did have the pull chain bucket, out there, in the shower area and all that. But I didn't see a lot of people using water in the hot rooms. So not sure if it was just not nobody was using it, or if it was more of a, hey, we just don't do that here. But more to come. I'm kind of thinking I might need to go back again soon, because, as most of you know, I'm saunaless in the new house. Haven't built mine yet, but more is coming on that as well. Hopefully, be talking a little bit more about my sauna build during National Sauna Week.
Yeah, you should see if they have any like a 10 pass type of thing. It's a regular visitor.
Yeah, it might be something where maybe a membership can make it worthwhile. But yeah, I can definitely see where, we talked about this on some previous episodes, where a lot of these public, banyas or spas or saunas or whatever, they really are, a lot of them are geared towards that big experience on a Saturday night. You're going to bring all your friends there. You're going to go there maybe once a month, maybe once every couple of months, and it's more geared towards that. The regular use I could see could really add up. So maybe a membership would offset that, or if they had maybe, hey, I'm just gonna go and use the banya. I'm not gonna, use everything or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and speaking of banyas, we took our trip to Toronto. Was that last year? And
Yeah, yeah.
that was your first time using public banyas.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a special guest for this episode that's related to that trip. Todd, who we met out there, has been very busy in his sauna life. But before we bring on Todd, there's something I saw the other day that I wanted to show you guys.
Absolutely.
All right, can you see that?
It's like a sauna for tortillas.
This is from Chipotle.
What?
So if you order, they have like these kind of like family meal things. You get a bag of tortillas, and we'll see. And then it's sauna's so popular these days that it says that on the Chipotle tortilla bag. So, but can you read the print down there? Can you see what it says? Do you need me to zoom in?
Oh,
Well,
wow. Okay. I know
no,
where this is going.
no, yeah, I see it, but I have a big screen though.
Yeah. So number one, make sure the bag is sealed shut. The best saunas are airtight. Number one, they've already messed it up. Come on,
Yeah,
Chipotle.
yeah, they've already screwed the pooch.
Yeah.
Chipotle, if you want to be a sponsor, we can help kind of make sure you get the writing correct on your
Yeah.
bags.
Absolutely. You know what? I love your burritos, man, but yeah, your sauna knowledge sucks.
But to be fair, number two, they talk about not leaving the door open, basically. And that's correct.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
that's a faux pas.
Talks about microwaving. That's a little bit more maybe in the IR realm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll give it to them.
And of course, I know IR isn't actually microwave. Physicist, you don't need to correct me in the comments. And then what else do they have? It's cool down. Hey, Arrow, number 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're
Cool down
close.
period.
They are. Yeah. Cycles.
And then the last one, go forth and enjoy sauna's fine work. Sure. I don't know. What do they get?
I mean, what a great find, Risto. I mean, this is amazing. I mean, how much sauna is now, permeating into other mainstream things. I mean, I'm seeing more and more references to it, in places where I normally wouldn't have, and seeing it more and more in movies and TV shows, and it's kind of fun.
But it's this. But again, obviously, this is why Risto was showing that in the first place, because that's a one and done sauna things. Because you don't reheat that anymore. So it's like there's no second round. There's no cycles.
No,
So
no water.
yeah, no water. It's an airtight space for one round, one round only. And obviously, that's the mainstream sauna in the United States of America and Canada as well. So it's yeah, well, off we go to Chipotle and talk to those folks about,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Please, yeah, Chipotle. I will eat a burrito on every podcast if you wanna sponsor us, but please let us fix your sauna marketing.
Yeah. Yeah, although it could ruin the cooking of the tortillas if they do it right. So I don't know if it's gonna work for them. But anyway, so we have, like I said before, we have a special guest for today's episode, Todd Shearer, and Todd lives in Alaska, and he was, I think, the only person that joined us outside of the kind of that local area in Toronto. Um, and so I won't tell too much of that story. But we have some iconic pictures from on the bench in Toronto. I'll insert them in if you guys don't have them. And we can't tell you where the picture was taken. It was taken at the secret banya. You might have to private message us for that one. But
Mhm.
but if you find that location, it's like one of the best spots to get a photo of yourself in the sauna in North America. So
Yep. Still my Facebook profile picture this day.
nice, nice. So welcome to the show, Todd. It's good to have
Thank you
you.
for having me.
Hey, hey, awesome to see you, Todd. Welcome, welcome.
Great to see all three of you again.
Yeah, yeah, and as is well, we had great fun in Toronto, so
Absolutely.
you don't have to travel everywhere we go in the future, so it's just like, you will be excused unless you want.
Well, Todd, no, this was awesome. I mean, and for the fans that don't know, yep. I mean, we traveled around. We definitely had a couple of good sweats. We learned, Todd's story, but one thing that you guys probably don't know is his story. So yeah, I mean, Todd, I love it. I'm looking forward to hearing it again. I know we haven't talked in a while. But yeah, how did you get into sauna and how did you end up traveling Toronto to meet us three?
Yeah, that is a really interesting story. So, by background, I live and work up in Anchorage, Alaska. I've been moved up here first in 2001. Worked abroad for a little bit, but Anchorage, Alaska has been my adult home. That's what I call it. But I kind of have led what is probably the typical North American experience with regard to sauna for the bulk of my life. It's a dark room, lined in cedar, a tiny electric heater, maybe some rocks, maybe not. No water, no drain, no ventilation, no light. It's a shoebox sauna, if you will. Typical practice was go in, stay as long as you can until you feel awful, and then exit and you're done. So for up until probably about a year and a half ago, sauna really wasn't something that was enjoyable that I would even pursue. And then a friend of mine who lives here locally invited me over to experience his banya, and that started to open my eyes to a completely different practice of how to use sauna or banya. I will use those terms interchangeably, so forgive me in that. Um, and it also happened to be in a period of my life where I was uh, working through trying to make some priority changes in how I'm living and where I want to spend my time and what I want to do. And so, those events came together at the right time. And of course, what does anyone do these days when you want to learn something new? You start tickling the keyboard and Googling things. Stumbled into a podcast by these three guys calling themselves the Upper Bench. And I'm going through these old podcasts from a few months prior, and I stumbled on one where there was reference to a sauna meetup in Toronto. And I mean, this was already late at night. And of course, at that point, I'm just death scrolling through these Upper Bench podcasts. And I was like, well, I got to find the one where it comes next, just maybe learn about this meetup. When's it going to happen? Is it already happened? I didn't know immediately. So, a few minutes later, got some more information, and I can remember the point I nudged my spouse and I said, I think I'm going to go to Toronto to this sauna meetup and go sauna with like these three guys who have this I've never really met, and they just have this podcast. And one thing led to another. I worked with my time off work schedule. I got on a plane and was able to meet yourselves and the rest of the Toronto crew. So yeah, that's how I got really kind of my kickstart on sauna. And I would say the experience in Toronto was definitely it kept kickstarted. It added accelerant to the fire, if you want to use a fire analogy.
Absolutely. I know, coming home from that trip, Todd, I was so fired up too. It was just getting to be, in all these cool different hot rooms with a bunch of different people. It really showed me, hey, this is why we're doing it. We're having fun, we're meeting new people, we're feeling good about it. And hopefully bringing a little bit of good, home with us. So it's awesome to see that, the something stuck here. So you've been busy working ever since. But
I
now,
have. I
now
have.
what I gotta hear about what you're working on.
So as with any DIY project, it goes through stages of dreaming, planning,
Mm.
starting to execute on those plans. And yeah, so I did exactly that. So post Toronto, it was months and months of dreaming and then planning. And then things really didn't kick off um, until March of this year. And to give you a little bit of a frame, Anchorage, Alaska in March, it's still winter for us. Both March and April, our winter is winding down. Uh, and I started the project. I'm gonna get a little nerdy here. Forgive me, but I started building this structure on helical piles. I had a company come in and install those. To give you a sense of our winter, we still had 5 feet of frozen soil in my backyard on March 2nd. Um,
Wow.
Overall, the building season is uh, very short compared to the lower 48. Most things were thawed out and starting to sprout green plant-wise in early May to late May. And by mid-October or early October, we are starting to get below freezing temperatures, and we had our first snowfall in the middle portion or latter portions of October. So it's a pretty tight construction window. I have a huge appreciation for people who are working outside, building and constructing either infrastructure, bridges, roads, what have you, or building construction. You work outside of those seasons in our winter months, and it gets really tough, really cold, really fast.
So those helical piles, can you tell us a little bit more about what those were like?
Yeah, so because of the frost depth and the nature of my property, I have a lake not too far away, or access to a lake not too far away. I was really concerned about that the frozen ground generating frost heave on the structure, jacking either one corner up or pulling another corner down. And so these helical piles, they're driven down much like a screw would. It's roughly 3.5 inches in diameter, if I remember correctly, with one corkscrew on the bottom of it. And so they screwed that down into the ground. It goes about 7 feet to get beneath that frost layer. And so I have 6 of them underneath, holding up the structure, which is in the backdrop behind me here. And that formed the foundation for the building.
Definitely something that I wouldn't have thought about. And that just kind of goes, there's going to be some challenges in the DIY crowd when you're up in Alaska, because I know here, you probably get away in a climate like this down in Texas. I mean, you could probably get away with putting it on top of a few, timbers. and build this
Absolutely.
and floating it. But
Yep.
yeah, I learned the hard way here last weekend doing a fence post. I found out what that Texas clay is all about. And yeah, so if you make sure people though that you are doing it right the first way, because like Todd said, if you don't, Mother Nature's going to win. It's going to either push or pull or whatever shift, and your little sauna isn't going to win. And you're going to be up for a headache. So very cool that sounds like you did it right.
Yeah, I was pleased with that decision, and from that, I started building out a foundation, and I guess I can start to share some pictures here. So let me work on the fly.
Yeah, because you messaged us like a month or so ago, and you're like, it had been kind of radio silence. We didn't know what was going on. I knew you wanted to build at some point, and you're like, hey, I've got 12 days of sauna for you guys.
Yeah,
And then each day, that was really awesome. You shared like another piece of your building journey.
yeah. So hopefully my pictures are sharing now. I hope get some confirmation from you guys. Yeah, I'm seeing some nodding. So yeah, so if you want that epic picture, this is the OG, the original that Risto took of me as I was really contemplating life choices
Yeah,
at a very special place.
I should tell that story. We were sauning, and this place has two banya hot rooms, and they're both good. I think they actually had an IR room, didn't they?
They
Um,
did.
so I didn't really use the IR, but they didn't have kind of the lame fit finish sauna that most banyas have. Two good hot rooms, and we were kind of going in between them and the cold plunge, and it's an excellent facility. And this was towards the end, I think, or three-quarters of the way through of our time there. And I think I peeked in the door. I think maybe I was going to go in, and I just saw you there in your in the heat by yourself, and like it just struck me. I was like, okay, I got to go get my phone. So I went to the locker, I got my phone. I was like,
Yeah.
just stay where you're at. You look epic there.
Yeah, this picture kind of encapsulates for me the pinnacle of the learning process and just an amazing trip that I had in Toronto. So, truly spectacular. So, I'm gonna see if I can advance this. There we go. Yeah, so foundation. That's what it looked like. I am not a builder or architect by trade, so squares and rectangles are kind of what I dealt with. You'll start to see as we go through this build here. It is a large rectangle. It's of just over 8 feet on the short dimension and about 17 feet on the long dimension. And that's so that I could split out and have roughly an inside dimension of about 8 by 8 on my hot room, which is going to be on the upper left of this foundation as we progress in the build. And then also on the right side, that'll be roughly an 8 by 8 changing room. So that was my design. Being in Alaska, colder temperatures, the changing room was very high on my priority list for the design and build. This trailer, yeah, so this was about spring break last year for us. So that would have been mid-March. We're still getting snow, as you can see here. And what I did was borrowed a friend's truck, rented that big utility trailer. And what you see on the back there are bundles of timbers from a local mill. Well, local in air quotes here in Alaska. It was still about a 6-hour drive. But one of the themes that I really aspired to was trying to use local materials as much as possible. One thing to consider is that almost everything up here is shipped primarily by container on barge. And that's everything from our tortillas to our Chipotle sauna bags to warm those tortillas and everything in between. But yeah, I was trying to use local products up here as much as I could. So these logs, they're white spruce. So the fins are probably going to be very familiar with the white spruce. I would imagine it's the same species or variation that's in Finland. And what the company does is they log the timbers or the trees. They'll do a little bit of I guess, rough shaping, cutting them to length. They'll kiln dry them for a period of time, and then they'll mill them. And they milled them into D logs. And here, this is what the D logs look like. So one side is curved. That'll be the outside that you see from the outside of the building. The inside is flat, and then there's a tongue on the top and a groove on the bottom. And separating those two when I go to stack the logs one on top of the other is a gasket, a foamed gasket, so to speak. So
Okay. Let's see. I have a few questions about this. Are you okay sharing prices on some of the stuff?
so the prices for this, they're actually published on their website.
Okay.
So given the design that I had, I think I spent somewhere on the order of about $6,000 for the lumber and also the gasket
Okay.
material.
And then how was it to work with the spruce, and what do you think of it? How is it in the sauna actually, like the smell of it and everything?
Working with it was absolutely fantastic. Their process of kiln drying and shaping almost all of these timbers were near dead straight. So from a woodworking perspective, it was fantastic. And in fact, you can see a line on top of some of these timbers, what's actually a giant chisel in this image right here. That's actually inherited from a longtime friend that I grew up with, who's since passed away. Um, and he gave that to my dad. My dad gave that to me. But classic woodworking tools, everything from chisels to saws. But the wood itself was fantastic to work with. The smell is amazing. It has, I would say, a light kind of pine smell. It was super intense the first time I fired it up, and it has tapered off since then. But it's quite amazing. And even to now, my hot room is actually still devoid of cedar. I don't have any cedar in the room whatsoever. Maybe a little bit of a personal challenge to try to get there, but yeah, it's dominated by a light pine smell at this point.
How thick are those walls?
The walls themselves, let's see, it's about just under 6 inches wide and about 7.5 inches tall when they get stacked. So my building had to be in vertical increments of 7.5 inches.
Okay, yeah, that makes a fun math. Yeah, when you're trying to,
Yep.
take your socks off and count, and no, that's awesome. But and then so you mean Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, but by going that thick with these timbers, you didn't need insulation.
Correct. In the walls, I do not have insulation. I did end up insulating my floor, and I did put insulation on my roof and also in my ceiling. A kind of a false ceiling in the hot room to make it a flat ceiling. That's what I elected to do.
Mhm.
Sure. No, absolutely makes sense. I definitely recommend anyone north like you is probably want to insulate their floor. That's probably
Mhm.
going to be one of your biggest areas there. So like you said, with that ground being frozen half the year, that's crazy. But no, that's
Yep.
really cool. I love how it's almost like I mean, this looks like a Lincoln Log set, for professionals.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd quite call myself a professional. I learned as I went. But it's a really common practice to use these to build cabins in what we call bush or off-grid Alaska, or even homes here on the road system. And once you get these logs warm, they stay warm and push a lot of heat back into the structures. The R value of an individual log is not all that much, but this is also a structure that I'm not having to keep warm throughout the winter. I'm using intermittently. I tell you, it's really nice to lean up against these logs in the hot room in your back. You can actually, lean against it and feel not too hot, not too cold. It's quite enjoyable. So,
Awesome. And that brings up a good point too. That big dense piece of wood. I mean, you can really put a lot of heat into that,
yeah.
before it's going to become almost too hot to be on with your skin. But where if you make a small backrest with the wrong piece of wood and it's only a 1/4 inch thick, that thing can be super, super hot. So definitely something to think about. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, and so far you're not feeling the heat through the log on the outside, are you?
No, I've gotten nowhere close to that.
Yeah.
Well, let's carry on the journey. We'll see what else I have here. Yes, we're jumping forward. It was built up course by course. Course would be the term for one layer of logs. For the log building community out there, I used a button pass as the type of joint on the corners. It's a controversial joint. It's also a beginner joint. It's not fancy like a dovetail or a Swedish saddle or anything like that. This is my first log project, so please, purists, don't bash on me. But yeah, that's what I used for the corners. You can start to see some of the windows and doors. So again, the hot room is on the left side of the picture as I'm looking at it. There's one window that you'll eventually see take shape. And then on the other half, I have 3 windows and the doors on the far side of this picture here. Yeah, I mean, typical building construction, you get walls up, then you start working on the roof. This, simple roof joists, 2x6s is I think what I used here. And you'll see later on that the front cantilevers out over the structure to provide a little bit of shelter. This is a picture from the inside. I first did the exterior walls and then built up this interior wall that separates the hot room, which is in the background, from the changing room or the warm room, which is in the foreground. You can see the gap where the door is starting to show up there on the left. And then on the right, that brickwork, I elected to get a through wall or through feed heater. So I'm doing all of the fire lay, fire construction, and feed of my wood burning stove from the changing room. And then the hot room is just the business end of heat, rock, waters, Lolu. So
Which the nice thing for your setup, uh, I won't give any spoilers away because I know which heater you have. I won't say yet though, but that heater I've sounded with it before, and it's pretty good with shielding the radiant, except for the door side. That door does kick out
okay,
a
yeah.
lot of radiant heat. So that I bet that works really nice for your setup then.
It does. I would say when I'm fully up at temperature, my walls are kind of baked in with heat. If I were to blindfold walk someone in there and sit on the benches, I'd say, and let them equilibrate, it would probably be tough to know where the heater is, provided you're not hearing cracking and popping from the fire. But from a heat sensation perspective, yeah, it's quite,
You're
it's
you're
full,
getting it
almost all
everywhere.
convective.
Yep.
Yeah, it's everywhere. It's surrounding.
Yep.
So it's quite
Yeah.
nice.
I love that uniform heat. For me, it's always a sign of a quality sauna build is you're getting a decent uniform heat. You don't have, a lot of stratification, cold toes, hot head. You're getting a lot of good even heat.
Absolutely. Super important. So a few comments here. The bricks, I was able to salvage those from a demolition from our house a few years prior. So, that's some material that I was able to reuse, and there'll be themes like that throughout the project that try to aspire to use some local materials. So this is a friend of mine. We're taking this picture because we had just inserted the upper 2 most logs in this interior wall. Probably the 2 most challenging ones we had, mostly due to geometry. We had the log cut just to the right length to squeeze in between the 2 walls. Plus, I had a little bit of a mechanical system that I had designed in order to create that seal up against the walls as well. And so we had just finished that. It was definitely a 2-person process getting those last 2 on. So I was glad to finally have the interior wall up and constructed at this point.
Yeah. What kind of mechanical system were you pushing out on the exterior?
Yeah, so what I ended up doing was cutting a groove on the inside of the log that I positioned, and nestled in that groove were 2 opposing wedges. And so as I pushed those 2, I should put it this way, as I pushed the 2 opposing wedges together, they actually created a force that went this way. and I had a rubber or part of that foam gasket sandwiched in there, and that then by pushing together this way, the wedges pushed out laterally and sealed against the wall. So it took me a number of phone calls to phone a friend and a lot of thinking in order to figure that little puzzle out. But that was the MO for this whole project, was coming up against a challenge, taking a break, thinking about how to work my way around it.
Oh, absolutely. I can't imagine how much you learned just about, like you said, this is your first, log cabin, not just, a sauna structure, but you're also learning about building a log cabin. This is definitely stuff in Alaska. I got to imagine has earned you some street cred now.
Maybe we'll see. It depends on who you talk to. Yeah, some more pictures in through here. The astute eye, I do have a limited electrical system in here. I have some lights in the changing room and lights also in the hot room, mostly from a safety perspective, just so that you can see where the benches are, and as you're coming down off the benches, in particular where the floor is. And still working through some of those details, but yeah, a small electrical system. And in fact, last night I was having a big long sauna session with a number of friends. It's cold enough here that I actually need to put a small space heater in the changing room. And so to have electricity out there was quite nice to be able to run that changing or that space heater. So this is what it looks like from the front. You can get a good perspective on the overhang of the roof there. On that long horizontal window, that's a transom window that's in the hot room, and then of course the door leading to the changing room in through there.
So your hot room's probably fairly dark. It's not super bright.
I during the daytime it's like ambient light temperature due to that window there, and I'd say overall it's a little bit more on the brighter side, but
Okay.
I mean right now our sun comes up at 10:30 and sets at 3:30. We're what, 2 days away from solstice. We have a lot of darkness. And so it's actually more common that I'm sauning in the dark. Now that will flip as we move into summer. I won't need to use the lights, and almost all of my sauna sessions in the summertime will be 100% daylight. There'll be nothing to hide from. So yeah, this is looking, I guess, from our house down onto the structure. I elected to do a metal roof on this. That's worked out really well so far. Again, I'd helped on metal roofs, but I'd never really planned and executed myself. Here, I'm starting to get ready to install the stove. You can see at the very top of this picture, that's the chimney that goes up through the structure. The floor. Oh, controversial floors. Um, I designed my floor to have a linear drain that went from wall to wall, from left to right on this picture. It's a trough style drain, and then the floor slopes down into that center drain there. And that hole there goes to the drain itself, which then drains out of the sauna room. I used Durarock on this layer here, ultimately covered it with vinyl patch skim coat. That's worked pretty well. I would also had the trim around the edges to create a little bit of a bathtub to guide some of the heavier water spills or water drops, I should say, off of the walls. I even milled a small little wooden drip plate, if you will, that covers that leading edge of the bathtub rim of Durarock. So all in all, I'm actually pretty happy with the floor. What I wish I had done prior to construction is visited more saunas that have open floors, where it's just floorboards with a gap between them right down to the ground. I considered that as an option in my design, but not having visited one, I was very leery of going down that road.
That's what mine is.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, you do. The simplicity is wonderful for the build. You do run into, especially in the winter months, if you're not blocking off some of the airflow from the side, you can just get too much cold air coming up from that floor. So, but if you block off the airflow in the winter months, or at least most of it, I think it's fine because you're mostly up top anyways. But I've never done a comparison. So I've heard that story a few times where people in the winter months can run into troubles with too much cold air coming up from below.
So, I mean, long and short, at this point, it works. It works really well. I think I do tend to lean towards the simpler solution. I didn't choose it in this process because open floorboards clearly would have been simpler. Live and learn. Maybe for my next project, I'll have open floor, or maybe I'll get disgusted with this and I'll tear it out and I can rebuild the floor. All of those are options. So,
Absolutely. I like the idea of the trough style drain, kind of like your garage drain, if you will, something
yeah.
like that. So far, so good.
Yeah, that's actually worked out really well. I've only had one problem with it. I didn't spot that a couple of leaves had fallen in there and started to in the actual drain itself. They worked to that circular portion where it drains out of the sauna. So after one session, I had some water building up in the linear drain there. Plucked those leaves out and was like, yeah, note to self, I'll do a little modification when to make it get rid of kind of the sieve portion that would have collected those leaves and keep it a little cleaner, but it's worked perfectly. A
Cool.
lot of people ask, where do you get these? This one's actually manufactured from a roofing company that does flashing for metal roofs, and it's called a hat channel. And it was about 10 feet long, and then I just kind of folded up the edges and used some silicone caulk and some rivets, and it's pretty simple. You don't have to go all complex here.
Cool.
So yeah, this picture has a skim coat on it. Looks pretty nice here. So I was pleased with how that turned out.
So you said leaves.
Yep.
Are you using Vitas in your hot room?
Not yet.
Oh, not yet.
I've been learning more about Vita, and I do have plans for next summer because in midsummer day is what I've learned is the best time to go collect the birch branches with the birch leaves. So that'll be a process in another journey for next summer. Most of the leaves at this point are just tracked in from our fall.
I'm extremely happy to see that you have that those logs don't go all the way down to the floor. So that's an awesome thing because that's pretty often overlooked.
Yeah, and so this was, I mean, to be fair, the logs they go all the way structurally down to the ground, but yeah, I have a covering to capture
Okay.
the water.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I should say first guide and then capture the water. And I mean, we're not talking about huge amounts of water here, but it is important, when I'm dousing myself at the end of a session or if someone's trying to cool off in the middle of a session with some cool water, there's a fair amount that's fallen to the ground and guiding right into the trough. So away from the walls where you would, if it does get in contact long term, that would be a rock point.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, and you don't have to worry about it. It's like in what we always do at the end of our sauna sessions, 3, 4, 5, we host the sauna room, and hence there's going to be a lot of water on the floor. But this is a forever topic, so we don't have to go there.
So my next slide, I already kind of spilled the beans on my on the stove that I picked. I guess a little bit of background or what this is. This is an Icky original wood burning stove. It's a variation on the traditional model. It has a longer neck, and that longer neck enables the distance wise to pass through a wall so I can feed through my changing room. Why I selected this one, this is one of the items where I decided to break my buy local philosophy. So, no one's perfect. But I was immediately drawn to kind of the circular open mesh style of wood burning stove with a large rock mass. That was a priority for me. I'm also a geoscientist by trade, and so rocks matter to me. They have made my career, and so I admittedly paid to ship boxes of rocks from Finland of olivine peridotite. Someone asked me yesterday what the age of the rocks were. I was ashamed I didn't know. So I have since looked it up, and they're anywhere from 2 to 3 billion years old for those who really want to know.
Wow.
But that's important to me. And I think for any project, it's important to define what are the must-haves, what are the nice-to-haves, what are your priorities. And if it's important to you and you have the financial means, put money into the things that are really important to you. That's what I did here. This is all open up because I'm doing the first burn outside of the sauna. I had heard about this practice. I knew generally why, but I'll tell you, it's super important. This thing was smoking for hours, burning off all the manufacturing residue. It was quite substantial, and I'm super glad I did that first burn outside of the hot room.
Super critical. I mean, these, anything metal, it's going to get coated in some kind of an oil-based sealant or lubricant to make sure that it doesn't rust when it's sitting on the shelf. It's like any metal product. It's not saying that it's unclean or it's not, the way it's supposed to be. It's exactly how it's supposed to be, so you don't get a rusty bucket, when it gets shipped to you. But Todd hit the nail on the head here. You do not want to have your first burn be inside your hot room. You're going to be getting that smell out of there for a while.
So, yeah, first burn photos, it's kind of like being a proud papa again.
100%. Every stove I get, it's got that photo right there.
So some amenities inside the hot room. Now we're sitting in that hot room looking out. I had a transom window I purchased. It's a dual pane, insulated, tempered window there. I ended up milling and cutting the window frame myself, and so inserted that glass pane from the outside on the inside, or from the outside, and that's worked out really well. And I believe, knock on wood, I've broken a family curse and not the window. That's an inside joke for my dad that he'll smile at when he hears that comment. But I will say the entire orientation of the structure and the view out of the window was really one of the biggest piece of architectural work and design that I did, because one of the objective was to be able to sit on the upper bench and look out this window at the lake in the midground and then the mountains, which you can barely see above the trees in the far distance. That plus my neighbor's shed, but I can't control that. So. All right, so let's see where we go next. Oh yeah, picture from the outside, getting the window in there. So that turned out really well. Some kind of more overall construction photos. What's interesting, a lot of people ask, so the structure got a little taller than I was kind of anticipating. How did I get the timbers up to the upper levels? And believe it or not, two to three people could lift these timbers by hand. And so simply with ladders and 2 to 3 people, we were able to move one side of the timber and then the other side of the timber. And so it's trying to work smarter rather than harder, and also just be simple. I didn't have a crane system or using things with mechanical advantage that may have engineering and also failure points in them. People to hold ladders was probably the biggest safety mitigation we had in place when we were lifting things.
Yeah, my build was somewhat similar to yours, not as nice. Mine was the hacked together Menards build, but it wasn't the safest. I think you get towards that top and it got a little bit crazy. I think I have a picture of a ladder on top of 2 pallets.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to get creative, but also, also have to be safe at the same time. So, um, ooh, pivot. We're going to talk about benches. So, again, what I wanted to sit on, I felt was really important, and getting some 2x4 cedar could have worked. Would have probably been rather pricey. I looked into thermally modified woods, and could have paid money to get them shipped up here. It was going to be pretty darn expensive. But I again was able to salvage some Douglas fir from our house was built in the 1970s, and there were these big 2x8 lengths of timber that were used of this Douglas fir that were used as light valances. So they'd have like a fluorescent light tube behind them, and then a diffuser underneath. Really common up here in the 70s. They were awful at generating actual light for a room. So we've been taking them out one by one. And so this is me starting on the left. Is it had a really dark kind of stain to them, and I ran them through the planer, kind of cut them to length. So the ones on the right are kind of further along in that planing process. Again, nerd alert. I ended up taking the dimensions of a sample piece and weighing it, and the density of this wood is not much greater than a cedar 2x4 or your average cedar. And density is what's going to be holding that heat long term. You get a really hot, like if I had oak, for example, a hardwood, that would scorch your bottom. But the lower density woods, those don't hold as much heat when you sit back down on them. So it's kind of my pseudo cedar from a science numbers perspective, because it is a lower density. And sure enough, they've actually been a pleasure to sit on. And we'll see some pictures of the final benches here. But yeah, it was nice to be able to use some reclaimed products that I already had. So.
Yeah, those look really nice. And people can always, if you want to do some tests at home, just use your oven, set your oven to 220, get some scrap pieces of whatever you want to try using it, let it heat up for a while, and then you can test. I've actually done this test in my sauna to see, well, how does oak compare to pine, compare to basswood, compare to a slate, to see like the difference in the feel.
And it's interesting after a long day of keeping the hot room going. The benches will be warm when you initially sit down on them, but then they'll cool off pretty quickly with your bottom on there. And if I'm in my birthday suit and I'm just sitting on a small towel, none of that matters.
It's very important. That low density thing is extremely important for your general enjoyment. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad I did that one right, Arrow.
You did it extremely well.
So then it's around bench construction, and I wanted to be able to access in and around my benches and under them in particular. So I built kind of rail system on the sides of the walls there. They're offset from the walls themselves to try to promote a little bit of air circulation around the sides and the back. Yeah, I wanted them to span from one side to the other. I'm guilty of building a stadium bleacher set. Not very creative, but I tell you, it works really well. I get everything from little kids who want to come in and enjoy it. And if it's new or they're not totally into it, they'll sit on that bottom bench, all the way to the hardcore who want to be at the top bench the entire time. Being able to pull them in and out of the wall, I can make small adjustments. If I'm going to have, just one or two people, I can optimize it for the uppermost bench. Or if I'm going to have a dozen people crammed in here, I can spread them out as much as possible and just make more options for people to find their own sweet spot, because not everyone wants to sit on the upper bench.
And what holds them in place? Just the weight of the benches?
Yes, the weight holds them down on the rails. You can kind of see on the side that some of those blocks that are holding the rail off the wall, they're a little proud of the top of the rail. That prevents the rail from sliding left and right, or sorry, the bench from sliding left and right. And then, yeah, they're just screwed directly into the walls of the timber. That's the one nice thing about these log cabins, is you don't have to go searching for a stud to mount something. Everything is a potential mounting point. I will say, before I move off of this, between the second and third bench on the side, you'll see a dark circle. That is a vent. That's my exhaust vent for all the polluted air to go out of. It's just a hole in the wall with a small kind of mesh cover on the outside of the building. I thought, we'll see more pictures around the ventilation later, but there's a debate. Should you be pushing fresh air into these hot rooms, or should you be pulling the warm air out of the building, out of the hot room? I think there's pros and cons to both of those. What I was really concerned about in my climate was pulling that warm, moist air out of the building with a fan. That means that warm, moist air has to go through the fan. Maybe I can find a way to design it to keep that inline fan in the hot room. Might fry the electronics. Or I keep the fan on the outside of the building. Then I have to deal with ice buildup. I was not comfortable, nor did I want to deal with ice buildup on an electrical and mechanical item. And so what I elected to do was push cold, fresh air via inline fan into the room and let that go out the exhaust that way. And so far, that's worked beautifully for me. And we'll see more pictures on the air intake into the building here in a bit, I hope. So.
Yeah, one thing our viewers can keep in mind is that the way that you built yours with the exterior feed, the feed in the hot room, yours functions more like an electric sauna.
Absolutely. That's
Whereas a wood burning sauna with your feed in the hot room, it's gonna pull more air in for that combustion and use up air as well. So you're not pulling it in or using it up. So it's more just like an electric heater. So that mechanical ventilation kind of helps move the air a little bit more.
Yeah, that's I'm super glad you brought up that point. But yeah, it's modeled after an electric stove ventilation system. And I will say I notice a big difference between when times that I run the fan and I'm pushing air into the building or into the hot room versus times where I don't turn it on. And just yesterday was having a conversation with a friend in the sauna, and he was like, "Yeah, I keep going to my buddy's sauna. It's really tight, really dark. First round's great. Second round, okay. Third round, I'm just getting dizzy and blah blah blah." It's like ventilation, man. You gotta get ventilation. It's important. Don't disregard ventilation.
Yeah, you can start getting lightheaded, and that's the thing. You don't get
Yeah.
the enjoyment because you just become lightheaded before you get that enjoyment.
Yeah, lightheaded. You may not feel great, like, I'm just not feeling it today. Or one thing that people don't notice oftentimes is like just you can't take very much heat in that hot room. So you may not even connect. I think most of the time people aren't connecting ventilation unless it's a really bad situation. It's just you spend less time, you can't take the heat as much. Yeah, you can't. I don't think we can overemphasize ventilation.
Yeah, I'll leave it at that. So a few different pictures and angles of the benches. Again, that's that exhaust vent in the back corner there. You can see the size of the rails, so they can create that bleacher effect.
Nice.
It's tough to take pictures in small rooms.
Yeah, I got to come up with my 360 camera one of these days.
Yeah,
How deep are your benches?
good question. Let's see. The lower two benches, I think, are 20, somewhere around 20 inches, if I recall correctly. The upper bench is somewhere between 24 and 26. It's designed so I can pull it just slightly away from the wall and I can lie down or one person can lie down and have their arms resting on their side. That was again a kind of a goal of the build, was to have at least one of the benches accommodate someone lying down. And I do enjoy that quite a bit. Yeah, when I'm in there with one or two people. Wow, I must really like my benches. Lots of bench photos. But you spend a lot of time sitting on them, so they are pretty important. They can make or break things. So heat source, here's the heater in its initial install. You can see the dark neck of the feed chamber going through the brickwork, and then what I call kind of the pigtail or the corkscrew of the exhaust going up through the center. I mean, talk about simple of simple. That's how these icky stoves are designed, and Then, of course, the mesh sides will hold the rock. I did a quick little rinse for each one to get some of the dust off, and nothing. I didn't really scrub them or anything, and then just started loosely loading them in here.
How many pounds?
I think I'm somewhere around 570 pounds.
Very nice.
So,
Almost 600 pounds.
yeah, I when I was looking at that stack of boxes, I was thinking, man, that's way too much. But it swallowed all but I think two of the boxes that I ordered. So,
Yeah, well, if you're playing the thermal mass game, you got that brick pass through, almost 600 pounds of rocks, and over 6 inches thick on solid walls, wood walls.
so I mean, if as we think about thermal mass and heat retention, I'll give you an example. I had a big sauna with friends and family coming and going through most of yesterday afternoon. My sauna was hot at about 2 in the afternoon, and I stopped using it and just started letting it cool down probably around 9:30 p.m. So 7.5, let's round up and say 8 hours of feed time in active fire time with the sauna. When I went in this morning, it was somewhere around 70 degrees in the hot room. However, ambient temperatures outside have been around -5 to -10 degrees Fahrenheit. And so, yeah, it holds its, I feel that it holds its heat pretty darn well in that hot room.
Wow. And how long did it take for you to heat it up?
That's a good question. And I've been playing with that. I can I can get it up and running in about 2 hours is my time frame. A little bit less if I push it hard and you're willing to go in kind of as soon as the rocks will generate Lolu.
Yeah.
It may not be the corners of the hot room won't be totally warm yet. You'll still feel some cold from the walls. That
Yeah.
usually goes away in another 30 minutes. So I'm somewhere in that hour and a half to 2 hour time frame.
Makes sense. And that's kind of, people, and maybe we've spoken about this before, but some people keep complaining or don't understand the idea of a smoke sauna. And because like, well, that's stupid, you have to heat it up like at least 4 hours, if not longer. But
Yeah.
obviously the whole idea is that you don't only heat up the rocks there, you heat up the whole space. And so it clearly makes a huge difference.
And the sessions early on, if I go in early, are you can ride those temperatures up. That's enjoyable. Sometimes I'll do that when I have less time. But also the sessions later in the evening where all that heat is baked into the walls. The rocks are just, there's just heat emanating from the rocks. That's kind of prime time. That's what you want to aim for. So
Yeah, it just gets better. That's true.
it's like, yeah, it just gets better as it ages. So
Yeah.
yeah, so this is kind of what it looked like fully done. And that little wire mesh there is just kind of hiding the transition from the exhaust as it comes up through the rocks and then transitions to the stovepipe in through there. The silver pipe in the background, I may or may not have a good picture of that, but that's where that fresh air is being piped into the hot room. And it has a little 90-degree elbow on it. I'm playing with the height where I want to put that. It works now, so I have no real reason to change it. It's all just optimizing at this point, in my opinion. But I'd like to maybe lower that at some point, get it a little closer to the top of the rocks. Not all the way, but a little bit closer. Experiment, just try different things.
Yeah, and I'm not sure anyone has really completely cracked ventilation yet. I've used some saunas where people are experimenting and getting notes from across the sea from from Finland and trying different things and I'm like, "Oh, it's an interesting idea, but feel wise and use wise, I'm not sure it totally worked." I think we're still working through that in the sauna world and even be able to explain it well. It's easy to just say like, "Oh, you should do this," but then to be able to like justify it and explain it And like all things sauna related, you have to test it on the
Yep.
bench.
And I've thought long and hard, well, do I go down the route of collecting data, temperature, CO2, blah, blah, blah? I mean, you can list any variable you want to start to measure. In fact, in my day-to-day job, our business decisions are based off of data, we hope. But for this, I'm more like, I think I'm just going to try it out. I'm going to see what feels good and react to that rather than go down the
Well,
data
they,
science side.
yeah, the human body collects a lot of data. It's a remarkable measuring tool. That we talk about that CO2 in the ventilation. If you pay attention, you're picking up a lot of information, not just a one single small measure.
Yeah.
You know, I tell people, feel your benches and walls with your hands, splash water on the rocks, listen to the sound, watch how it evaporates off the rocks. You should be a part of the measuring system.
Yep. I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah, so lots of pictures of an installed stove there. You mentioned Risto earlier. The standoff distances, I think it's down to 4 inches of standoff on this. And, one of the things I'm actually thinking about is building a safety railing of sorts around the heater. I'm currently in the design process of that. Recognize I can slap some 2x4s around there and probably have a 60% solution. But yeah, I'm still thinking about what I'm going to put around that to make it a safer atmosphere. I do have a number of neighborhood kids that come through and are really enjoying sauna, and I want them absolutely to be safe. And I do enjoy having adult beverages with friends, and so the probability that someone has one or three too many is pretty high. And I don't want them to be face planting into a bunch of hot rocks. So that is on my list of things to add in here.
Yeah, definitely something I don't want to be doing is, yeah, stumbling around, especially like you said, if it's 13 hours of darkness and I'm stumbling around. I've had a couple of soda pops. I'm going to be reaching around for something to grab onto as I stumble.
Yeah,
Yeah, much rather have it be a guard than a rock.
yeah, absolutely. So
Even though that's absolutely true, but even though, the hot water, that's the problem with kids. It's just like, when you have that level water there, like, heating up for a couple of hours, it's boiling
yeah,
hot.
yeah. To go down to the subject of water, my practice in the sauna, I have buckets, like plural. I have a big blue 5-gallon bucket. It is plastic, but that's on the opposite side of from where the stove is, and it's full of our tap water, which is frigid here in Anchorage. And that's for rinsing, splashing on people, and use kind of a silicone pint glass. It's pretty simple. Just put that over your head. And then I have 2 buckets that I rest on the bench closer to the heater. And I have a big ladle with an extended handle, and I can ladle my water from those metal buckets onto the rocks for the Lolu. And lately I've been adding a second metal bucket in there, just letting that heat up. And then when I'm at the end of my session, I can add cold water if it's too hot, or I can just go with warm water and use that as kind of a rinse, soap, and final rinse.
I did exact the same back home in Finland, exact the same.
That's kind of my end of sauna ritual. I usually precede that with kind of a nice, healthy blast of Lolu. You almost two ladles full, which is about as much as I could handle. If you're not wearing a hat, you're going to be feeling that tingling sensation on your ears and on your face, and you feel it settle down across your body, down over your shoulders, across your chest, across your waist and your legs if you're sitting there, sitting upright. Yeah, you better be prepared, or you go down to a lower bench, and then you'll feel it descend even further. It feels really good to follow through that entire cycle of what I call the Lolu blast, and then do a rinse, a soap, and a final rinse. This is what the feed neck for the stove looks like when it's running on the changing room side.
What length of logs can you do with that one?
The ones that I have in my backyard, 16, 18 inches. I could think I can go up to probably 20 or 30 inches.
Okay.
I've never really pushed it with like big long logs.
I was surprised with the Iki. It's that's deep. That
It
is,
is very deep.
yeah.
It's very deep. And what I find is that depending on how I'm burning, I'll start the fire over that. You can see that V-shaped grate in the middle there that brings air up through the ash pan to help feed oxygen in for the burning. I'll usually start the fire in there initially, then I'll start kind of spreading things out and having a longer burn patch, if you will, as I'm heating up the sauna. And then when I get it up to temperature, I don't have to keep feeding as much wood into the stove. And so I then keep a smaller fire a little deeper back. And I'm playing around with it. It has its own temperament. I'm getting better at lighting my fires and having less smoke come back into the changing room when I initially fire it up. So it's working well. I'm happy with it. I will say it only has 2 speeds. It has on and jet roar. So for good or bad, that's the 2 speeds it has.
And then how much ash are you ending up with at the end of the night? I mean, is it a complete burn, or do you have any chunks of wood that are kind of left over in the morning?
It is nearly always a complete burn. Right now, what I have is I'm burning well dried out. It's spruce, so there's very little ash left actually with this, and it makes it hard because it doesn't keep embers and coals very long with that spruce wood. But it's what I have, and the best wood to use in your stove is the dry wood that you have. There's always room to improve in the future. I also, for the safety conscious, I just have cement board underneath my feed at the moment. I do have plans to put a couple of large format tile on that floor to protect the floor a little bit more. It's a DIY project, so this is how I'm doing it, not necessarily how you should do it. And I'm getting around to all the bits and bobs. It is operational, not finished.
Yeah, yeah, just ignore the comment section. Don't read the comment
Yeah.
section of this video. But that's okay. That's okay. Like there's in Brian McWilliams' book, he spoke with a Russian guy who said if you build one banya, you'll build two. It's a learning process.
Absolutely.
If you built the perfect banya the first time, I don't know. I don't know if you're being critical enough about it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And there's absolutely things I'd change on this one too. So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's the fun of it. You're gonna retain those little nuggets, especially when somebody comes and asks you about doing something. Well, make sure you do it this way because I remember struggling, in X, Y, or Z. So I mean, I'll be doing my third personal sauna build out here in the next couple of months, and I can already tell, there's a million things on my mind that I want to change from my previous builds or previous designs, and some of them are going to be experimental, and not all of them are going to work.
yeah. So I think we got to be getting close to the end. This is from when I actually first time I'm heating up the room itself. A little bit of a side story I alluded to. So our house was built in 1970s up in Anchorage. 3/4 of the homes in Anchorage were built in the 70s. Go back at the time they discovered Prudhoe Bay in the late 60s. They went through a boom time of building and construction, not just in Anchorage, but building the pipeline that carries the oil from the North Slope down to Valdez. And so all these homes built in the 70s, the nicer ones, they built saunas in them, but they were the North America cedar shoebox style sauna, much like I described at the beginning of this session. This thermometer was in the sauna in the house that we bought and that we live in now. And if you take a moment, if you pause and zoom in underneath the degrees Fahrenheit legend, it says West Germany. Not Germany, but West Germany, to give you a little bit of sense for probably when it was manufactured, where it was manufactured, clearly. I've done a little bit of calibration on it. It's close. It's not perfect. I kind of have my own personal, it's about this feel when I look at that needle. I don't think the relative humidity is calibrated at all, but it tells me high or low. Good enough for me. But yeah, I kind of get a kick out of that thermometer.
Yeah, that's a blast from the past, and I love how you know incorporated old demo bricks, the old thermometer, different pieces, to bring that new sauna some old heritage.
Appreciate that. Yeah, that was definitely a goal of mine. So this story ends with my replica of trying to reproduce as best I can that picture of the beginning of my at least construction journey and the inspiration that I received and experienced in Toronto. My son's trying to take this picture. I don't even know if the hot room was hot. It was probably cold because we're trying to cram the photo in. But yeah, anyway, thank you to the Upper Bench for all your thoughts and your resources and the inspirations. It's been a fun journey. And I'll let you know I've been spreading the wealth amongst our Anchorage residents. It's been a joy inviting friends and family, seniors, all the way down to little kids, and enabling them to experience kind of what I see are the joys of sauna from a physical perspective, from a mental and an emotional perspective.
Very
All I
cool.
can say is bravo, bravo, Todd. This is excellent
Yes,
work.
Thank you.
100%. If you build it, they will come.
And they're coming, and they're coming. So
That's awesome. No, thank you so much for sharing this time. I mean, this is exactly what, we're looking to do here. I mean, inspire people to get out there and try things, share it in your communities. I mean, this is one sauna in Alaska that is going to hopefully spread out, and be another sauna in somewhere else, another sauna somewhere else. And hopefully some really cool sauna memories are in store, and you can make this kind of a heritage piece. That's really cool. Well done. I think this is great. I can't wait to try it out. I need to get to Alaska now. So,
absolutely. I know a guy who's got a sauna.
Yeah, that's exactly the thing. So, as some people know that I've been the lecturer of the year for an organization called the Finlandia Foundation National, and I've been traveling the country, and the one invitation that I wanted never came. So I want to come to Alaska, and so it's we have to do a trip. The upper bench. We have to
Well,
go.
this will be my formal invitation for the Upper Bench to come on up to Anchorage. I can figure out accommodations and a number of sauna locations so we can get a variety.
We're gonna
So,
take you up on that, man.
Absolutely.
You're gonna regret what you just said.
yeah,
No, no, I
2026.
will not. Trust me, I will not.
so how is the? I'm curious. You talked about connections. I'm wondering, have any news organizations reached out to you yet? Although your build is pretty new, and then
Yeah.
are you starting to connect with other people? I mean, I think it sounds like you're. I have so many questions. Like, how's it been for your family, and then how's it branching out into the wider community of your friends and
Yeah.
strangers and everything?
So before I answer the connections question, I do want to recognize I'm not the only one with a sauna in Alaska, and I recognize that. People have been building saunas and banyas for hundreds, if not thousands of years prior to me. The Alaska natives have a rich and deep culture of using steam baths and hot rooms for both physical and also religious purposes. So I am by no means trying to represent that, and I am not experiencing that. I'm trying to learn more about it. It's, I think, a chapter that enriches the entire practice. The Russians have a big influence in the banya culture. We have a number of big Russian influence in a number of communities here still in Alaska, which is why a number of individuals will refer to their hot rooms as banyas rather than sauna. And so that's kind of, we have a three-way melting pot of kind of an Alaska native culture, the Russian culture, and in kind of the spread of the Finnish culture as well. So I wanted to kind of acknowledge those past and present who have a lot more experience than I do and a lot of history. And I'm on my journey learning. So reach out to me if you have thoughts, comments, and want to share. With regard to family and connections, I think I'll start. There's two parts to that. One has been watching, one of my youngest son has gotten way into it. He's super excited about sauna. My eldest has been a little bit more cautious, but he's venturing into it. And it was, I believe, last week I got home from work and he said, "Hey, Dad, can you fire up the sauna?" And this is about 6 o'clock, and I'm looking at the time, and I'm doing the math. I'm like, all right, if I start the fire now, it'll be ready at this point. Then you can use it. And I pushed myself. I didn't think we were going to have enough time. I ended up getting there with enough time to have an enjoyable couple of rounds. But yeah, last night I had to go down. We were kind of afraid that he'd been in there a little too long. So I think he's starting to get the itch quite a bit as well. So yeah, the family's definitely adopting it. My better half, she enjoys some of the lower temperatures and the lower and the middle bench. Not necessarily as many rounds and as intense as I like it, but we all have our own preference, and I think that's the important part is people, follow what they like. With regard to friends and those connections, from an invitation and participation perspective, I've been paying a lot of sauna debt lately. So, borrowed a friend's truck. Well, please come over and enjoy the sauna. I borrowed this tool or et cetera, et cetera. So, I've been working really hard to pay off my sauna debt. But I'm getting back to kind of one of the original purposes for building the sauna was around that building a sense of a place of community and where people can get together and just chit chat. And so and maybe it's lighthearted. Other times it might get serious around challenging life issues. We each go through our own ebbs and flows of high times and good times, and I think I'm what latched on to me and what I really like is creating a space where people can connect. And if they choose to share and use it in that space, that's what I'd like to be able to offer, to talk about issues, both good and bad, because it certainly helped me through some challenging times.
You hit the nail on the head there again, Todd. I think, we definitely were cut from the same cloth. It's been a pleasure, getting to know you a little bit more and, hear your story up there and just how you, are just being probably one of the better stewards for learning something that is so culturally rich. I think the smartest people in the world are the ones that admit they don't know shit.
I'm very much in that category.
And it's a lifelong journey. I think, it's cool to see where we've been and where we're at here today. And I can only imagine in the next couple of years, what other new stories we're going to have. So very cool. Very, very, I feel very grateful, to have, the introduction and the experience with you, Todd. And it's been wonderful having you on.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. I've had a great time.
Yeah. Arrow, any final questions or thoughts for Todd here? I know this is definitely going to be one of our super episodes.
Yeah, there's no question about that. No, I just there's one thought that I so when we started recording this episode, I told that I was saunaing with my buddies last night, and kind of interesting that that social aspect of sauna is maybe something that most people don't necessarily understand, because you are in the sauna room. Like in my case, there's normally like maybe 5 other guys with me in the hot room. At one time, we are maybe, yesterday, I can't even count, but I think we were like 12 guys maybe altogether. And it's the main point why you are there is the heat, the contrast. So if you either talk or you don't talk. So it's like you're not obligated. It's not something that, okay, I have to now. This guy is either semi-naked or naked next to me. I have to talk to him. No, you don't. No, you don't. But you will. So it's just like that's kind of the beauty of and obviously family sauna is another thing. It's another thing, and it's another way to bring the family more together. But anyway, no, thanks, Todd. I truly have enjoyed this episode.
Perfect. And a big thank you goes to the three of you as well. A big part in my growth journey in learning and appreciating and being exposed to the culture of sauna and the practice of sauna.
Yeah, I love the way that you've been a student of that. I don't know if you use the word chapters, but like these different cultural chapters of this book, and that as you go through it, and that you're able to learn from it. You know, we talk about it being multifaceted because so much of the understanding is just like a real short magazine, but actually what there is out there is like many chapters from different cultures. And you're doing such a good job learning it. When you talked about
Mhm.
washing up at the end of your round, and then Arrow chimed in right afterwards. But when you were describing that, like you sounded just like Finn's I've listened to. So it's just kind of boring, practical, washing up, like
Yep.
that aspect is, I think, so important. And then your build, you did a great job. This is going to be wonderful for us to point to people to say, I mean, you don't have to build it that nice as Todd did, but it's a good place for people to aim. The way you built it is like how I would build it if I was in your shoes, using those local materials and having thick wood walls and tons of rocks and a good size hot room. Like you just did so many things well.
Thank you. And I think it's important to recognize each person has different amounts of resources available to them. It could be time, it could be money, it could be materials. I don't know, could be experience or knowledge. I think it's important for each person to take stock of their own resources and understand what do I want? What can I accomplish? And you can accomplish a lot with a tent sauna. You can accomplish a lot with a barrel sauna. You can accomplish a lot with a a $30,000, $50,000 sauna. And you need to figure out where you sit on that spectrum based off your own resources, and then pursue that with vigor, in my opinion, and then enjoy it. And that's the big thing. Then enjoy it.
Yeah, there's a lot of geographies of different sauna expressions, and where you were at, where you're situated in that geography. I love that. I want to see more representations there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's I love that you're using it. This isn't some showpiece. This isn't just something to look at. This is a functioning piece of technology and function all in one. And so it's awesome that it's going to get used. It's going to get dirty, like you said. Leaves are going to get everywhere. Mud's going to get everywhere. But it looks
Mhm.
like you are well prepared to handle just about anything gets thrown at that.
Yep, it's kind of a bunker.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, I'm waiting to don't leave any food in there. You're gonna have some bear crawled up in there taking a nap.
Yeah, maybe a bear. We do have them come to the neighborhood every now and then. But yeah, the squirrels, I'm sure, would find the food if I left that in there.
Oh yeah.
All kind of stuff.
Awesome. Well, Risto, Arrow, Todd, this has been a great way to spend a Friday evening. I am going to see about if I can convince my wife to go maybe run to the Banya here because I think they're open kind of late tonight. So I'm just fired up. I mean, somebody says Banya and I'm ready to go, Todd. No, this is great. We appreciate you very much.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Appreciate you.
See you later. Bye.